everybody. Welcome to Horror Tree. Welcome, Horror Tree family, friends, and first timers. I'm Sarah Elliott, and I'm joined today by Matt Micheli. I hope I've said your name correctly, Matt. I should have asked that beforehand.
No, you said it fine. You said it right. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. And we're going to speak to Matt about his latest book, The White. Matt is a horror and dark fiction writer out of New Braunfels, Texas. He has several fiction and non-fiction pieces featured in various magazines and anthologies. Did somebody pay somebody to write this bit, Matt? He's a loving husband and father to a daughter and husky dogs. He spends his days dabbling in domestication and his nights in tequila, always searching for the next great story. So The White will be followed by a second novella in March entitled Scratch, and the third, you're really treating us, in June, called 2 Minutes with the Devil, and they're both published by D&T Publishing. So Matt, how are you doing today?
I am doing very well, thanks. Bearing with me through that computer mishap we had earlier. So I won't shy away from it. We had some issues, but we're on now. But if I would have known you were going to read the bio, I would have wrote a really, really long one to make it uncomfortably awkward for you. but no, I'm great. I'm great. Great to be here. Great to be here.
Excellent. I won't ask you about how the weather is where you are, because if it's cold, we get it, and if it's warm, we don't want to know. We don't want to be jealous.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, then, yeah, don't ask.
We'll skip the typical British questions about how's the weather where you are. We'll just skip over that. So
you know, Texas is one of those places. Like the big thing is you never know what it's going to do hour to hour. So it can be freezing cold, and then you wake up the next day and it's 80 degrees. So you really have no idea. We don't get full seasons. We get a kind of a hybrid throughout the year.
Okay.
But I won't tell you how it is right now. But we're surviving.
Okay, that's good. So I'm going to jump straight in with some quick fire questions. So, sweet or savory?
Sweet or savory? I go savory.
Okay.
I'm sweet. So.
Beginning or end?
Ooh, I go end when it comes to writing. That's the fun part.
Okay.
With life, I go with beginning.
Yeah. Good answer. I like that. Early riser or night owl?
We have an 8-year-old little girl, so definitely more of an early riser these days. I'm also getting older, so sleeping in, I feel like I wasted half of the day, and I don't have a whole lot of those left. So I try to get up early.
Cool, make the most of the day.
Absolutely.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Yay, me too.
Yeah, coffee. Green tea occasionally, but it's just a break from the coffee.
Cool. And the last one, pen or keyboard?
Keyboard. And if you saw my handwriting, you would know why. I can't even read it. So definitely keyboard.
Right, back to the book, The White, which I've read and I really enjoyed. I really got into it. It didn't take me long to read it at all. So tell us a bit about it. In fact, give us your elevator pitch for The White.
So let me start by saying this is always the most challenging part of writing a book, is coming up with the elevator pitch for it, right? So excuse me. So without going off of the synopsis, a family gets trapped in their home with an unwanted visitor. She's not a very kind lady, to say the least. So they're trapped by a snowstorm that's way worse than they anticipated. It's a freak storm, came out of nowhere. In the house, tensions kind of flare up, anger flares up. So inside is pretty bad, but then outside of the house, there's something in the snow, which is way worse. And this is a tough one. This book, because it is so short, it's hard not to go into spoilers, because everything that happens, in my opinion, is kind of, I try not to let anybody know at all what's going to happen. But let's just say it's pretty bad outside. So you got the dynamic inside the house, the family horror, and then outside you've got the physical horror with whatever is in the snow. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it kept me guessing. It definitely kept me guessing. I didn't know what was going to come next, so I was surprised. So that was good.
Nice. Well, that's a good thing, right? I hope. Some readers aren't a fan of that. They're like, I wish you had more exposition, told me what's happening and what's going on with it. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
that's me. I don't. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's a
Characters
lot.
didn't know either. So yeah, there you go.
So why did you write this book at this time? Especially if you've got two more coming quite soon as well.
I kind of alluded to it in the prologue. So my wife was diagnosed with pretty terrible disease. Fortunately, knock on wood and God willing, she's right now cancer free and she's about to wrap up her treatments, which is better than most that go through what she went through. So we're very, very fortunate. So with that being said, I had some time off. I had to take time off if I wanted to see my wife. Hospital systems, you know, my initial goal was I would work, pick up my little girl from school, take her to the hospital to see mommy, and kind of do that daily routine since my wife was going to be in the hospital for 35 days. But my little girl was not allowed at the hospital. So that basically threw a wrench in everything. So at that point I said, I can't work if I want to spend the day with my wife and then take care of my daughter afterwards. So needless to say, I took time off of work. Wife finally got home from the hospital. I continued to take time off to help her with treatments, driving back and forth and just being there for her in case something happened. In the meantime, said with this time off, since I delved back into writing, and I'd been writing a lot of short stories and some things like that, I said, I'm going to write a longer piece of work. Now, obviously, this one wasn't that long, so it's not a full-length novel by any means, but it was longer for what I had been doing. And I really feel that I'm better in that kind of area of writing, more so than my short stories. Some are good, but you know, I just like to be able to develop the characters a little bit more. So that being off of work, and then a year or two ago, time flies. So I don't remember exactly when, but we had what we call the snowpocalypse here in Texas.
Yeah.
It was iced over and snowed over for about a week. I couldn't walk outside without sliding down a steep driveway, so we stayed inside. Rolling power outages, no running water. So pretty miserable, kind of like the worst camping trip you'd ever been on. You know, you can't do anything, but you're not really outside enjoying the scenery either. You're just stuck inside. So that whole experience kind of gave me the idea for this story. And then again, the timing was right. The ideas were coming. Had time off to write it. And then the initial line, hell is finally frozen over. That's what started the book. I had no idea who the characters were going to be, except the mother and son, and that dynamic. And the great thing with great pieces of writing, or you know, writing that I enjoy, is things kind of come to you, and you kind of watch it and read it as you would as a reader.
Yeah.
More vessel than a person with all the ideas. I just kind of watched it go, and then got to the end, and I was like, "Holy cow, this is fantastic!" And there you go. So all the stars aligned. Time off of work again. Snow experience, a little bit everything. But yeah, so that's the extended version. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And what you said about just letting this kind of story flow, and I think that's like the fun of it and the joy of writing. So I'm similar to you. I'm less a plotter and planner. I'll just sit down and write and see what happens. And when I get to it, it's like, I didn't know it was going to go there.
Yep. And you're excited like you would be as a reader.
Exactly.
And that's the best part. And again, just being a vessel for the words. So your brain's producing this, your mind's producing this, you know, you're not really in control of it, and just let it go wild. It's fun.
It is fun. So this might connect to what you just talked about, but what was your biggest challenge in writing this book?
For any book, you know, I'm not going to go into, it was so emotionally draining or any of that kind of stuff. I'm not, you know, this is my release. This is my stress release and my fun. It's my hobby. So I'm not going to go down in that path. I would say time more than anything, and not just with this piece, but time in general when it comes to writing, just finding that time, because I'm a father, I'm a husband, I run a small business. I mean, so there are challenges there, just finding that time. I'm not a writer that can sit down for 20 to 30 minutes and knock out 500 words or 1,000 words. I really need a couple of hours of uninterrupted time, where I can sit down, shut the door, play some music, kind of get into the rhythm. It takes me a little bit to get my mind off of the daily tasks and focuses. So again, finding those 2 and 3 hour blocks is a challenge, but we made it happen. And again, that's probably why it's only 65 pages. Who knows?
Yeah, but you made it happen twice more as well. So you found the time.
Yeah. The one that's coming out in March, I'm working on right now, and it's getting to that point where I'm like, oh man, I got to hurry this up. Like I got to sit down and write. So, but it's coming along.
Excellent. So some of the characters in your book, were they based on or inspired by any kind of like real people that you've met, or?
So characters in this book, and I'll go back to pretty much every book or every story I write and all the characters. Any similarities are purely coincidental. Okay, that's my legal.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but yeah, really, I mean, they're all based off of somebody I've met at some point, and just remembered at some point. Otherwise, occasionally a character from television might come into play, or I might visualize a certain person a certain way. Really, about, I guess, 3 of the characters out of this book, I kind of had my mind on somebody else visually, and kind of adopted the character off of their characteristics, not necessarily personality, but the way they looked, or at least the way I perceived them looking throughout the story. But yeah, again, purely coincidental.
Yeah, because the couple of characters, I was like, oh, familiar, like a couple of people I know.
Yeah, and those that are reading it, no, it's not about you. About you.
Yeah.
Margot, you know who you are.
It's all coming out now.
Yep.
So you've got 3 books published by the same publishing company. So why an indie press?
So I'll correct you real quick. So the next one that's coming out is going to be a self-release. But the following one will be by D&T, who published The White.
Right. Okay.
So let's get into that. So why indie press? Random House hasn't returned my calls. So beyond that, you always have that thought, like, I'm going to be a big time writer, big time publisher, big time agent, driving my Porsche and all that. That may come, it may not, but that's it's neither here nor there. But indie publishing, there are a lot of options for great publishers now, and this wasn't always the case. I started writing years ago, and I'd say, well, it's probably been 15 years now. I actually had a novel picked up for publication. Now, this novel has haunted me because this is a horrible novel. It's horrible writing. I was trying to sound a certain way and didn't quite have my voice yet. Really pushing the shock value stuff. It was more transgressive than horror, trying to do the gross out thing, and really poorly written. Good story, but poorly written. I had a publisher pick it up, which, to me at that point, I'm on Mars. I'm excited. I'm elated. I start working with an editor, but I'm so brilliant at that particular moment that the editor doesn't know what I'm trying to do. So I refuse all edits. It's my project. I'm the one being published. And of course it comes out as a train wreck. So this publisher, several months later, goes bankrupt.
Okay.
I get the book picked up by another publisher. They sell to another publishing house, and basically the book just gets lost in translation somewhere. So I've had experiences with them, and in particular, cover art, I had no say in it. Again, I was just so excited to be published at that moment. I allowed them total control over everything, which is a big mistake. You as the artist need some control on how this thing is going to look and turn out, in my opinion. But so 2 really bad experiences. Now, fast forward, 10 or 15 years later, there's a lot more credibility in the indie world. There's a lot more quality books coming out, and there's a lot more publishers that know what to do and what not to do nowadays. So having said that, D&T was my first choice. One of the reasons is I'm a pretty loyal guy, and when I started writing again, They published a short story in an anthology, and that was my first anthology publication. I've had, stuff in magazines and stuff, but this was my first anthology publication. This was kind of a big deal. I was taking a different track. And they were great to work with, super responsive, quick to respond, just lovely people. Dawn, I've spoken to her. Seems like I speak to her almost every day, which she probably hates. But just a great lady, just honest, just a really nice, genuine person. So I went with her, and she picked it up, and then I pretty much told her, I said, at this point, I'm going to give you the option of publishing my work before I send it out to anybody else. Which is kind of what happened with 2 Minutes with the Devil. Also, of course, she loved the white, said we wanted it. I was ecstatic. I got to work with Don Noble, who does a lot of cover design for them. They've got another designer on board now too, and he's really good. But Don, I've gotten to know, and we kind of work together to get that cover.
Yeah.
He kind of nails it. You say, this is what the story's about. Here's kind of what I'm seeing. And I just let him go with it. I'm not going to give him every detail. He'll come back with something, and I may say, hey, can we do this or change this color a little bit or font, and we knock it out. But as far as just, I'm not going to sit there and detail or draw a picture out for him and say, can you do this?
Yeah.
But again, D&T is fantastic. So, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but D&T is fantastic. A lot of quality work. For starters, and then again, just really easy to work with, and their name's growing in the indie horror world right now, which is awesome. I kind of want to be one of the writers that came in near the beginning to kind of help the company grow and grow together. So that's my goal. Yeah, they're fantastic.
Excellent. It's good that you found them, and it's nice that you found someone that you can work with quite easily as well, and they kind of like respond quickly, and you've got like a vision of where they want to go as a publishing company. So excellent. Okay, so who would you most like to write the foreword for your book?
So I'm going to stay away from indie writers because I don't want to leave anybody out. There's fantastic writers, and I primarily read indie right now because there's just so many. Really, it's hard to keep up, but made a lot of friends in the community. It's hard to read everything, but they're fantastic. So as far as a forward, I would go with somebody that I'm still a huge fan of. I'd probably say Bret Easton Ellis.
Okay.
Not necessarily a horror writer. He did write American Psycho, which honestly was my least favorite of his books, just because it was the biggest. But I love his minimalist style, and kind of how he has horror in the background, but that's not really the center point. And there's always some good emotional response from his work. So yeah, big fan of his. So I mean, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say Bret. Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting that you say about how he's minimalist and the horror is kind of like in the background, because when I picked up your book, I didn't know what to expect, and I was like, oh, is the horror going to be right up in my face on every page and stuff? But it wasn't. It was there, but it was definitely scary, but there was more to it, I felt, especially the dynamics around the family as well. So it kind of had everything in it. It's a nice kind of balance.
It's all about the people. And again, being that I don't outline, I kind of let the story go. I do think I'm kind of a dialogue snob. And I think I write pretty good dialogue to really build those characters, and the characters speak naturally, in my opinion. Yeah, and then when you get to the horror, it's pretty blunt, pretty brutal, a little gory. I did have a reviewer say it was extreme horror. To me, it's not.
No.
Just because the whole book isn't made up of that. I would say the violent moments could possibly be labeled as extreme horror. But I don't go out of my way for the shock value or anything. But I do want those moments because they are so few to count. I want that violence to really matter and kind of punch you in the stomach when you're reading it. Not your stomach, you're a nice lady, but others. But but yeah, again, it's kind of the lead up to that point. And again, going back to the exposition thing, the overdone exposition, I'm not a fan of. A lot of times I lose interest in horror movies and horror novels once I realize kind of what's happening. Once that reveal is made, it loses steam for me. So I kind of like leading up and then finishing strong.
Yeah.
And you know, and there you have it. But a little blood and whatnot, a couple of deaths, we're good.
Yeah, yeah. And that makes sense. What you said about the dialogue, and now you've said that, and I'm reflecting back to when I read it, I was thinking, I feel like I already know these characters, but I couldn't work out why I felt that I knew them. But I think it is through what you did with the dialogue, actually, because it's almost like, yeah, I can imagine her saying that, and I can almost imagine the next thing she's going to say or how she's going to respond.
That's the idea. So I'm glad it worked.
Yeah. So, which books would your latest book sit next to on a bookshelf? What would you see it along with? Whether it's a bookshelf on like someone's personal bookshelf or a bookshelf in a bookstore.
Obviously horror genre. I would say for me, it could be anywhere between Stephen King or Bret Easton Ellis. Maybe even a little Chuck Palahniuk in there. In the indie world, I mean, a lot of great D&T authors. It could be in the mix of all those guys. Some Daniel Volpe, maybe not as extreme. Mark Tousey, Ruth Ann Jag, name a couple, and there's a whole bunch, so I won't get into. So sorry if I miss anybody there. Again, I don't want to go down that naming road. There's so many. But yeah, it could be. There's a lot of great indie horror. But yeah, again, my style, I'd say, would range anywhere between Bret Easton Ellis and Stephen King. Only way better.
You put it out there.
Sorry.
So in terms of like, okay, so it's a horror novella. How scary is it on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being Scooby-Doo scary and 10 being Stephen King meets Clive Barker in the House of Hammer?
That's a really tough question because again, I wrote it, so I'm not sitting here getting scared and turning on all the lights.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
But I like that it's kind of based in reality. But I go. I mean, and you can tell me your answer here. I would probably say 6 or 7. But that's me. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say the same. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was definitely thinking the upward side of 5. So yeah, 6, 7. Yeah, okay. I'd say that. Yeah.
Okay. It had its moments, and again, it
did.
Those are the moments are kind of few.
Yeah.
But pretty impactful.
But they do get you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so who's your kind of target reader? Who's like your target audience? But I know that, having asked that, I know that you write for you and not particularly writing for another person.
Yes.
I know that it's kind of what comes out of you, but what would you who would you see picking up your book and reading it type thing?
So yeah, you touched on it. I definitely write what I would like to read. Unfortunately, I can only buy so many of my books, so I have to sell it to other readers. I mean, anybody that's a fan of horror, anybody that likes Stephen King. Now, granted, I love his short stories. His novels are way too long for me, so you're never going to get the 400 plus novel. But if you like just a quick punch, quick story with punch, a little bit of blood and gore, a couple of things that might be shocking, maybe a couple of trigger warnings in there, but pretty much just your typical horror reader. I think anybody can really enjoy it. I could say, anybody that's got a terrible mother or mother-in-law, anybody that hates the snow or is scared of it, they could relate. But yeah, honestly, I'd say really any horror reader should be able to get some enjoyment from it.
Yeah. So you've got 2. So The White came out 30th of December. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. So we're still fresh within the last month.
Yeah, and then you've got 2 more coming out this year. Any further plans for next year, or are you just gonna see how inspiration hits you?
So, excuse me. The next 2 I'm kind of loading quick, right? So I'm going to get these 3 out, kind of build that foundation. And 2 Minutes with the Devil, I had initially started that as a short story. Sent it in for a couple of publications, and the feedback was this needs to be made into a longer work. This has a lot of potential for longer work. So I kind of had that idea and was able to kind of finish that one out pretty quickly. So got that one. Of course, D&T said they loved it and they wanted it, which was fantastic. Scratched, that I'll be releasing hopefully in March, if everything goes well and I just get that time to finish it. That's one that I started a long time ago, and it's been through a couple of revisions, and I kind of changed path of that book. So that one's kind of been there too. So I've been able to write and work on these fairly quickly and get them out within a short time span. For the rest of the year, I will be releasing every Halloween my little short story called A Halloween Story. That one's available right now. And each year I'm going to take a different theme and kind of, write a 30 to 40 page short story that'll be available for purchase. Kind of build that. So the second one of that will come out. Beyond that, I've got a couple of ideas for novels or novellas, either way. I just haven't sat down to write them. So I'm thinking this year is going to be focusing on these 3, promoting these books and building that foundation. And then next year I can kind of dive back into the writing part of it. Yeah, I've got some ideas. I don't want to share them with you because they're pretty awesome.
Okay. Well, we've got The White to look forward to. So if you haven't bought it already, go get it. And then 2 more after that. And I found a really nice quote about The White, and it kind of summed it up really nicely. It describes it as a multi-layered thriller that'll chill your blood faster than a freak blizzard. Matt Micheli's The White proves there are scarier things than being trapped at home with family. And that had me right there. I was just like, yeah, I want to read it.
That is an awesome blurb by a Bram Stoker nominee. By the way, if you couldn't tell, she's a very good writer.
Yeah.
Just somebody I've known for a while in the writing, the horror community. But yeah, I was very pleased with that. I was like, that's the leader right there. That's the one that. But yeah, I was grateful for that.
Yeah, it certainly is. It sums it up really well.
Speaking of multi-layered, I had somebody comment on a post, and they said, how could it be multi-layered when it's only 65 pages? So I wanted to explain it to them, but I did not. So I just let it go. Yeah.
Go read it and you'll see.
Yeah.
That's the talent, that's the skill. So I know that you're very kind of involved with like the horror indie community, and we can find you on Horror Tree as well, because you've got your own interview series, haven't you?
Yes. It's kind of on hiatus at the point, but that was a lot of fun. So yeah, New Blood.
Yeah. The rebirth of indie horror.
That's it.
Subscribers, we have candid conversation with folks making a splash in the indie horror writing world, and nothing is off limits.
That's the idea. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I'm going to be looking some of those up now. And we've also got a written email article interview from you as well. So that'll be up on the site somewhere too. So where we've dived into a little bit more about like your writing process and your writing journey. So if you want to find out more about that, have a look around the site to find that. But Matt, it's been really great talking to you. Where else can we find you? What are your social media handles and your website address?
I'm not on a whole lot, but let's see. Instagram at Micheli World, my last name in World. Facebook at Matt Micheli World. That's my author page, or you can look up my personal, just Matt Micheli. Other than that, that's it. I'm not on the TikTok, and as you can tell, I could barely get the video to work, and it's still over here acting up. So I'll have to work on that and do some of those dance things.
Oh gosh.
Help with the cells, but yeah, Instagram and Facebook, or reach out to my email. I've got a contact on my site, mattmicheli.com. You can contact me anytime, any questions about the book. I'd love to not answer them and bounce around whatever the question is, but feel free to contact me.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I'm Sarah Elliott, speaker with Matt Micheli. So thank you very much for listening. Remember to have a look, see if you find Matt elsewhere on the Horror Tree site. So until then, keep sleeping with the light off. You never know what might emerge from the dark. So thanks very much. Bye, guys.